Warren Burt is a composer, a performer, a video artist, a sound poet, writer, and instrument maker, working across hardware and software, electronic and acoustic mediums. He's an American, but that's okay, and he now lives at Ararat in Victoria. And over a career spanning more than 5 decades, he's built a wide-ranging practice in algorithmic, have I said that right? Good. And electronic music, sound installation, video synthesis, and sound poetry, performing and exhibiting across Australia, the US and Europe. He's a prolific writer and has contributed decades of articles to Soundbytes Music Magazine and published books on experimental music. So with all of that background, I'm really looking forward to what Warren has to present to us. Did we have a title? Oh yes, 58, the title, 58 Years of Musical Electronics. Thank you, Warren.
Great, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, good evening. Let me go to sharing the screen. The way I will do this is that I will show a slideshow with pictures and sounds of pieces I've done over the years, and hopefully we'll get done with that about 5 or 10 to 8, and we can have a few questions when we're finished. So let me go to share screen here. Okay, 58 Years of Musical Electronics by me, Warren Burt. There we go. And let's see. This will start off with a blast of sound on an old Hammond organ. No, it's not. Try again. Okay, so the music here is from a piece of mine from the early 2000s called Bossa Blotto. It used an organ solo by, I believe, the Brazilian organist Walter Wanderley, treated with studio techniques to extend it into something other, which is something I've done a lot of. Take a musical object and somehow other it. Onward.
It costs a little more.
Okay, that's a fragment of a piece. When I first got to university, which was the State University of New York at Albany, I eventually was given access to their very big Moog system, which you can see here. This is Joel Chataby, who was my teacher, and this is a system he designed with Robert Moog. It was called the CEMS, or Coordinated Electronic Music System, and it was designed as a kind of a hybrid between a synthesizer and an analog computer. And if you can see the little arrow, this bit up here was the analog computer with a whole bunch of counters, which you could then take patch cords out of here and turn on all of this other stuff, which was 1, 2, 3, 4 racks of stuff. It was one of the biggest Moogs in the world. And here I used it to do real-time automated mixing between a number of analog tapes to make a collage of my favorite sounds.
Well, the problem with the dolphins. Who are the dolphins? We looked at their brains, found they were quite as complicated as ours, and they were slightly larger in the species we worked with. So we chose to work on an animal whose brain is 20 to 40%.
Okay, the music is by a piece called John Lilly Meets the Dolphins. The voice is John Lilly, who is the dolphin scientist, and is later an explorer of the farther realms of human consciousness. And I used voices of walruses, whales, and Fred the walrus from San Diego Zoo. The guy in the picture is Kenneth Gaboro, who is one of my teachers. And the idea in this seminar was to treat music as language and language as music, and to see what kind of interesting hybrids could result. Okay. Okay, so in this picture here is Robert Erickson, who is my other principal teacher in San Diego. We studied timbre and how it was the basis for our perception of music. We normally think of music, the main things we listen to in music are melody and harmony, but in fact Erickson's thing was what we really hear in music mainly is timbre and the tone color of things. So this piece was a rewrite of Robert Erickson's piece called Loops, an Informal Timbre Experiment, and it was written for acoustic instruments. I used the Serge synthesizer to make a piece where timbre of each note is different. I'd become involved with Serge Cherepnin's electronic music design adventures in 73, 74, and built several of his synthesizers over the years. And you can see and use one of the Serge systems I designed and built at MES in Fed Square. MES is the Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio. It's a public access facility, and the synthesizer I designed was called the Paperface system, named after the printed paper module graphics that it used. And so it was that began my plunging into learning electronics, which I knew nothing about, but taught myself and had some friends teach me stuff so that I could actually cope. Okay, so when I was at University of California, San Diego, I encountered a large Buchla synthesizer, and we can see 3/4 of it in this picture. The guy at the end is indeed Donald Buchla himself, who designed this synthesizer. And the specification for the synthesizer, what oscillators, sequencers, and so on, was done by Robert Erickson and Pauline Oliveros. This was a piece called Moist Days in Midwinter, and it was made on the large Buchla at UC San Diego. It's an example of a self-playing automated patch, an idea many of us were exploring at the time, so that we set up all the patch cords and things to have the thing play, and then we pressed play, and then we sat back and let the machine make all the decisions as to what it would actually play for us. This is 1972, and so as you can hear, it's an early example of sort of artificial, sort of intelligence in music. Okay, so this little device here is a synthesizer built by EMS Studios in England called the Synthi VCS3, and this is the AKS version because it has a keyboard and it also fits into a briefcase. These two halves go together, and it's a synthesizer in a briefcase. And at the time, I just felt so cool to go around with my borrowed electronic music studio in my briefcase. And this was the start of my search for systems where, as a friend said, you should be able to go to the gig with all the equipment you need on public transport. And so today I do a lot of my work on commuter trains on a system based on an iPad Pro. The results are then transferred to the web for distribution using iTunes software. So it is, yes, it's a lot of fun, but it really does make sure that you keep things very simple, although the patches can get to be very complex. But keeping your equipment set up very simple so that you can actually go to the gig on public transport. Okay, a tiny excerpt from a longer piece. This is the DAISY system, DAISY Digital Analog Interface Systems. See, everybody's making funny acronyms. And this was the studio at La Trobe University, which no longer exists. La Trobe University Music School Department was cruelly shut down in a money-saving exercise in 1999, but we had designed a huge studio for it. So these two devices here are called a DAISY system, designed by John Roy and Joel Chataby, and it's a random information generator. And we acquired two, as you can see, two for the Center for Music Experiment at UC San Diego. In 1975, I moved to Australia to join the music department at La Trobe University, and we acquired a DAISY system. In fact, this system you see here for the studio there, and the large Serge synthesizer. This is the paper-faced synthesizer that is now at MESS in Federation Square. The piece was called Ferran Who Broke My Heart, written in 1974, and it used DAISY to control the subharmonics generated by the sync input on the Serge synthesizer. And so you put a signal into the sync input of the oscillator, and it would play subharmonics for you. And this was one of my first explorations of microtonality, which would lead me down a rabbit hole for many, many years. And in fact, I think I'm still in the rabbit hole. Okay, so 1974 was my 75 was my last year. Yeah, 2 years at the Center for Music Experiment in University of California, San Diego, and I designed and built Aardvarks 4, an electronic music system that adapted a number of the principles of the DAISY system, among others. I proceeded to use it in pieces until the late 1990s. This piece, a little excerpt of it called All Hell Broke Loose, 1972 to 74, used the Buchla synthesizer to model the patch that Aardvarks 4 was based on. So I made a patch on the Buchla, and then I took that as the model for designing a machine, which you can see here, this silver box, it was based on the patch that the Buchla made the sounds with. And this machine, by the way, Aardvarks 4, is also now at MES, at the Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio. It's in the front window at the moment, in fact. In 2021, I shared the circuits for Aardvarks 4 with Antonio Tuzzi from Sardinia. He's a computer programmer, and he developed and extended the Aardvarks 4 modules, so they're now part of his NISTI package of modules in the soft synthesizers VCV rack and Mi rack. So I made a patch on the Buchla synthesizer. We turned that into a box of circuitry. I used that for many years performing, and then it went into, like everything else, it went into the box. It went into the computer and emerged as a couple of modules in a thing called VCV rack, and that's where it is at the moment. Okay, and here's another piece using Aardvarks 4. So here's Aardvarks 4, and this is my Surge synthesizer in an earlier stage. Okay, tiny little excerpt. So this is a patch using Aardvarks 4 and the personal Surge system I'd begun constructing. The sound from this is routed to 8 polyplanar loudspeakers, which are styrofoam loudspeakers, hung from the ceiling of the room, through a manual switching box, which you can hardly see, but here is a little box with a whole bunch of switches on it, and it's all manual. There's, 5 inputs and 8 outputs. And I also got this from the Center for Music Experiment. The piece itself is a monophonic melody. It evolves through a number of harmonic worlds over an hour. This reflects my interest in monophonic melody pieces, which I was currently teaching in my music theory day job. And I still have this music switching box years later. I mean, this is like 50 years later, and I still have this switching box, and occasionally it actually gets used. The polyplanar speakers I don't have, which is more the pity. But, you have to downsize in some way. Okay, so here's the larger Surge system. So this is my personal system, which now is the property of John Dent, a dentist in Wollongong. And this piece is an example of my trying to write pieces in a more gentle style. It was a collaboration with a music dance piece with Eva Kartzag, who was my main artistic collaborator for about 25 years. And Eva was continually reminding me to not make things too pretty. I think I failed miserably there. I think I made it very pretty, but what the heck. Anyway, so this was the Surge synthesizer that I had. see Aardvark's 4 on the table here. Okay, quick example. In 1978, I built a box of CMOS circuitry consisting of a number of sequencer counters, 4017s, if you're into CMOS circuitry, and I called this box Aardvark 7. It enabled me to generate melodies in just intonation. I used this box over the next 30 years, and it, together with the Surge modules, some auxiliary modules designed by Julian Driscoll, and Aardvark's 4, enabled me to make patches of great complexity. In this place, this is at the installation at the Experimental Art Foundation in Adelaide in 1978, and the sounds are routed through a number of metal advertising signs. Here's one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Okay, and these have transducers, which are objects which transmit sound into physical objects. All a loudspeaker is a magnet attached to a paper cone. So instead of having the magnet driving a paper cone, which produces very good sound, we bolt them into physical objects like these advertising signs, and it makes bad sound. And the bad sound is really useful for making interesting music. And so this is Le Grand Ni. Remember Monty Python, the knights who say ni. So the big ni in Indian music, sa di ga ma pa da ni sa. Ni is the grand seventh, the major seventh. And for those of you who are classical music fans, my model for this piece was the Shostakovich Seventh Symphony, the subtitle of which was Leningrad, not Le Grand Ni, but Leningrad. So lots and lots of fun with puns there. Okay, so a little bit of noise music there. I was also involved in using very cheap technology to make noise-based music. Resonances and Feedbacks from 1979 uses a small pocket calculator which was miswired to send signals to a small transistor radio, which made the sound because it was wired into a feedback loop. This photo shows a slightly lighter version of the piece where we have the little calculator right here, and that then goes into the transistor radio, and the signal then goes back into the calculator. So these two are in a feedback loop, and then the output there comes into this device, which is a Yamaha SU10, a little sampler, and this is the controller with the little slider there, and so you can change the filter settings and so on. And that then goes into this device, which is called the Air Effects by Alesis, and you move your hand over this little dome here, which sends out infrared light beams, and the movement of your hand then changes the filtering or the modification of the sound. So with this little setup here, I can make truly dreadful noise music and be very happy with it. The original synthesizer was just these little devices, these two here, and I bought these in York, England, when we were on tour, and it cost me £5 for both of them. And for I think the most expensive thing was this little cord between the two of them. And the whole thing was called the 5-pound synthesizer. It weighed considerably less than 5 pounds, but it did cost £5. So this is maybe my ultimate junk electronics piece made for a first performance in Bath, England. It involves the entire kit used in the Plastic Platypus duo I had with Ron Nagorka. We made music with cheap technology which was designed to make the processes of its making apparent, and which was easily portable using mono cassette recorders in many unconventional ways. Here we have two Muson synthesizers, which are currently living in the front window at Mess, and a little loud microphone, and a whole bunch of mono cassette recorders. Here's the metal advertising sign. Here's a little Chinese accordion, a didgeridoo, a little computer calculator, which drove the synthesizer, and you can't see it, but there's a little tiny harmonica here, harmonica. It's about that big, maybe? Yeah, about that big. And it plays very nicely. In fact, I have two of them. Okay, so onwards. Okay, Joel Chatterby had one of the first pre-keyboard synclaviers. The next year, the synclavier began being built with a clavier on it. It was controlled with an algorithmic language called Play2D, which was later absorbed into Max MSP. A number of you may know Max MSP, which is currently the basis for the very popular program Ableton Live. So if you're using Ableton Live, you're actually using Max MSP. I made a number of pieces on this machine on trips back to the U.S. in the late 70s and early 80s, and this one explores the fun available in changing indexes on frequency modulated sounds. So this, before you got a keyboard, this is what the synclavier looked like. And now here's the synclavier with a keyboard. Okay, Tristram Carey, who you may know as one of the people who did music for Doctor Who, got a keyboard-equipped synclavier for the University of Adelaide. In 1979, he invited me to come over there and compose with it. In a very busy week, I made 50 minutes of music with it as microtonal accompaniments to a series of video pieces I made that year. This one is called Chords. It's from Suite for Synclavier, and it explores the kind of lush timbres that FM techniques made possible. FM, which was developed by John Chowning at Stanford University, was something we all explored with great fervor in the late 70s. So in San Diego, California, I was a member of a group called Fatty Acid. We played popular classics really badly. It was a comedy act. It was quite fun. And so the other digital synthesis innovation at this time was the Australian Fairlight CMI, a further development of Anthony Furz's Quasar M8 design of a few years earlier. Victorian College Yards acquired one in the early Fairlights, and I was lucky enough to get access to it and compose a number of pieces over the next few years with it. Dr. Burt's microtonal disco-fed orchestra is one aspect of this. An incompetence ensemble of sampled instruments enabled me to make funny music which showed off my lack of chops with great facility. I played this piece to the developers of the Fairlight CMI, and needless to say, they were not impressed. Stevie Wonder was more their target audience. Oh well, their loss, not mine. Okay, so the Fairlight, of course, is capable of serious musical exploration as well. In this piece, Canon, December 4th, 1985, I used the record resources of page R, which you see a picture of, one of the Fairlight's composing pages, to make a complex canon which takes phasing, a la the American composer Steve Reich, to the limits. And as you hear just the beginning there, it gets very, very messy very quickly for about 12 minutes. Okay, so this is from this 1983 St. Kilda Festival. I'm at this moment in 1983, living in fact in Middle Park, just up the street from St. Kilda Pier. And I installed Natural Rhythm on St. Kilda Pier. The Serge synthesizer uses a hydrophone, an underwater microphone, fed through a pitch to MIDI converter to control analog oscillators. The underwater sounds of the pier are also heard, and there's a water gong, a ring of aluminium, also attached to the hydrophone cable, tracing the rhythms of the waves. It all mixes into a genial texture which played for the entire day. And so here you can see the pre-reconstructed St. Kilda Pier, and I had my stuff gathered with a little wheelie cart pulled out there and set up, and it was quite fun. I'd like to do more outdoor performances like this. Recently, I've become a member of the Ararat Interested Parties, an artist collective, and we've gotten some outdoor battery space systems, so this might be a future possibility. More electronic music in the bush, we shall see. Now here's my first microcomputer. Okay, in 1981, at the instigation of George Lewis and Serge Cherepnin, I got an AIM-65 single-board microcomputer. You can see it here. You can also see it now in the front window of Metz. Later, Serge gave me a chip for it that added Forth. Some of you may know Forth, a wonderful computer language, to its capabilities. I built a crude interface to allow the 3 AIM clocks to serve as oscillators and some rudimentary I/O to allow external control. and this piece solos degenerative pleasures of the text sound, reads from the memory of the AIM, making waveforms with whatever information it finds there. It's controlled from a Serge touchpad keyboard sequencer. So this was my first true computer programming stuff. Okay, in 1985, I was CSIRO artist in residence at the Monash National Measurement Laboratory. I built a set of about 80 tuning forks. These were based on tuned to a 19-note just-intonation scale based on Claudius Ptolemy's 2nd century CE tuning theories. The forks were hand-sized, and you can see them here. These are the big ones, which have resonators under them, and the small ones, which you can actually move in the space around it. This is an excerpt from a 2006 piece called The Animation of Liszt. It uses multi-tracked forks to make complexes of beating chords and sustained tones. The forks are played by Catherine Sheave and myself, and the forks are now in the possession of the Melbourne group Speak Percussion. We plan to do a piece together later in the year as a way of introducing the instruments to the public. So hopefully we will now, sometime around November, begin to do pieces again with these forks, which are quite wonderful. Okay, this is from Okay, I began working with Simon Veitch's Perceptive Systems in 1987. In 88, we did a large installation at Expo 88 in Brisbane. People moved through the space, and their movements triggered off a vocabulary of sounds. It's a very popular exhibit. An estimated 8 million people passed through it during the expo. Any idea that I was an elitist artist disappeared then. So you can see various kinds of, like here's a window frame, which is mounted over the edge of a one-story drop to the lower floor, and so you can put your hand through there and hear the sound of course, breaking glass. And there's like a whole bunch of heads, which you walk through the heads and trigger off echoey sounds, and there's sounds which are pentatonic scales, 5-note scales, in various jazz instrumentations up here. So, and so on and so on. So it was quite a wonderful little thing. Okay. Oh, by the way, Simon Veitch has recently made the circuitry and software for the 3D system public domain. So if anyone wants to extend the system, you now have the means to do it. Just look up Simon Veitch Perceptive Systems and 3D, and you'll follow enough links to see the circuitry, and you could build your very own system. Okay, so here we have a sound sculpture exhibit at the Victorian Arts Centre in 1988. Aardvark 7 is down here. It's making control signals, which then trigger off the Julian Driscoll synthesizer up here, and then the sound is played through this little cassette recorder. We use this little cassette recorder as a sound system, and it would tweedle away all day for several weeks to make the sound. Here's a side view of it, and this is more a front view of it. Okay, for a 1992 piece using James Gleick's Chaos software, I rigged up a crude system where the sound output of the program is coming out through this little loudspeaker in the laptop computer right there, and that it has a little pencil microphone literally taped onto into the loudspeaker, and that then goes through a pitch to MIDI converter. And then that MIDI information controls the little synthesizer. And so you have the resulting, it's played by microtonally tuned Proteus 1 synthesizer. And they later turned the sounds of the Proteus into a little SF2 file, and you can still download that off the internet. Okay. This is from a 6-CD set called Music for Microtonal Piano Sounds. It not only explores many different microtonal scales, but much of it is based on various kinds of chaos mathematics. Okay, 1994 Australian tour with Eva Karzag. There she is right there, and here. Here we are. Here I am in the Queensland Art Gallery, and I'm wearing Buchla Lightning, little infrared rings which you wear on your fingers, and the movement of the infrared lights is turned into MIDI signals. And my hands follow the movement of her, and this produces music, and she could hear that music and dance with it, or not, as she preferred, one or the other. And I used the Buchla Lightning for about 6 years. Finally, something went wrong with it, and I was told the only way to repair it was to ship it back to the U.S., which at the time would have cost me more than I originally paid for it. So I eventually got an Alesis Air Effects, which you saw earlier. Not as versatile as the Lightning, but at least it enabled me to continue to work with gesture-controlled electronics. Okay, in 1992, we're working in DOS. Do you remember DOS? And a little program in DOS called Ravel. And so we have the piece is called Turning the Furniture of Chaos. And I used 60 furniture stores in St. Paul, Minnesota. I was in St. Paul, Minnesota briefly for about 6 months, and working with the American Composers Forum. And so I used these phone numbers of the furniture stores in St. Paul as a source of information for a real-time improvisation with chaos generators. And you can see the generators down here: random range, triangle, fractal, ladder, drunk walk, cellular, strange attractor, and a feedback counter. They would control these particular things. And we had you heard the sound. So that is not a piano. That is the Yamaha QY8 sequencer down here, which has a little sampled piano inside it. And it's sitting on the grandfather chair, and they've got these two little loudspeakers here. And so every morning I give myself the discipline of writing a little serial piece based on techniques of the Australian composers Felix Werder and Keith Humble, and then that plays the synthesizer sampled piano for the rest of the day. This piece is called At the Corner of High-End Modernism, and I really like giving myself the disciplined task of writing a new etude for this system every day of the exhibition before the gallery opened. I think the exhibition went for about 3 weeks. And Sun Ra, the American composer Sun Ra, talks about freedom and discipline for the artist, and says in a context between these two things, he preferred discipline. And this was certainly subjecting myself to a strange sort of little discipline. So this kind of informal music making with friends is something I really, really enjoy. This is 1997 at the Horsham Art Gallery. I'm playing the tuning forks. I've got one in my hands live. Al Wonder is seated at the humdrum, a slit drum, an African-style slit drum, and he's playing that. And Allison Thompson from Ballarat is playing the flute. And the computer is playing microtonal sine wave chords to create a sonic environment for improvisation.
This is the amazing instrument that was the world's first live electronic instrument, the Theremin Vox. It sounded nothing like this. It sounded much better.
Okay, so on my t-shirt here is a picture of Lev Theremin himself, Leon Davidovich Theremin, he was a rather amazing guy. He invented this electronic device. This is a crude contemporary reconstruction from the sunshine-based designer Herb Yerker. Quite a wonderful little thing here. Built into a video cassette box. And so Theremin Electronic, there's a film called Theremin and Electronic Odyssey, which would tell you about his history as an electronic instrument designer and a spy for the KGB and a performer on Carnegie Hall and a whole bunch of other things. He's quite an amazing guy. Look it up, Theremin and Electronic Odyssey. I think it might even be on YouTube. And so this little piece was called Little Lullaby for Living Clara. And I was an improvising performer. I went into my Russian professor voice, and we told the story of Lev Theremin and Clara Rockmore and their wonderful love. Okay, so you can get the idea. Okay, we have 3 laptop computers here, all working in John Dunn's various DOS or Windows programs. And so the output of this computer here goes into that computer. The output of that computer goes into this computer. And of course, the output of that goes around and completes the feedback loop there, making microtonal electric piano music based on my ideas from my misinterpretation of Kenneth Gaburo's piece called Lemon Drops from the 1960s. And one of the essential things about this little performance here, this little installation, which was done for the first iteration conference at Monash University back in 1999, is these little plush animals that were listed there. And in fact, I sort of use these little guys to give a kind of guiding spirit, or at least a sense of humor, to the proceedings. So it's not all just intense chaos and feedback loops. Okay. Okay, from 2003, Pythagoras' Babylonian Bathtub, and it's a 3-hour-long performance, explores many kinds of Pythagorean scales, which is interesting because the Pythagorean scale, as we know it, was invented by the ancient Chinese about 2000 BC, but Pythagoras himself didn't live until 500 BC, so the Pythagorean scale was around for at least 1500 years before Pythagoras himself was. I use 3 laptops and a variety of software, and it's performed at the late lamented Cecil Street Studio in Fitzroy. It's now been gentrified into residences. I wonder if the people who live there now realize the history of the Melbourne avant-garde performance that took place there for the 25 years at least before they moved in, and the even earlier history of the place as a textile factory. Quite interesting little building. Okay. Okay, so this is the Granger Cross Electric Eye Tone Tool, which is based on design from Percy Granger and Burnett Cross in the 1950s. And you can see me and Catherine Sheave, and we're moving our hands over this masonite board with 16 slits in it, and the 16 slits are controlling photocells, which then control the pitch and the loudness of 8 oscillators. And what the oscillators are playing is a whole bunch of samples of Early electronic music, like some of the sounds are made by CIRAC, the CSIRO's first computer, which was probably the first or second computer in the world to be used for sound synthesis. So the idea of using a 50s idea, resurrected in 2008, to play sounds from 1948 to the early 60s greatly appealed to my sense of historical irony. Okay, in 2012, not 19, we're in the 21st century now, 2012, I wrote Nightshade Etudes, 24 short pieces, each of which was based on DNA patterns from members of the nightshade family, tomato, tobacco, etc. In each etude, a different microtonal scale is used and a different timbre. So, for example, you could be playing tomato DNA with a physically modeled duplicate of the Fender Rhodes electric piano, etc. The project came out of a more than 20 years collaboration with software designer programmer John Dunn, who wrote a number of algorithmic composing programs for the PC. The program used for this piece is called ArtWonk, and I wrote most of these pieces on a netbook on computer trains with ArtWonk controlling the Modar Pianotech virtual instrument. Okay, so this is from a 2024 concert at Jolt Arts in Northcote. I'm playing my current Lenovo laptop. The software on display is Wolsonic by Marcus Hobbs. It's based on concepts by the Mexican-American theorist Irvin Wilson and enables you to play in any possible tuning and to morph between two different scales as well. Wolsonic is processing MIDI, which is controlling a patch in VCV rack, a mostly free software synthesis toolkit for PC or Mac. This live improvisation uses a software synthesizer that lets you morph between different wavetables. So we're morphing between scales and we're morphing between wavetables. VCV Rack and its iPad sibling MiRack continue to expand and grow. VCV Rack currently gives access to over 4,000 different modules. Most of these are free, too. MiRack is slightly smaller, with an arsenal of only about 800 different modules. And so it's interesting to use that software then to control your software synthesizer. And that's it. So let's stop our share. Yes. I think we have stopped. Okay, boom, and here we are. So if we've got 5 minutes, so any questions, just ask them, and I'll probably not know the answers.
Just wait for the microphone.
Some of that music sounds familiar in some science fiction films, used as a backdrop.
That's because back around 1952, Lewis and B.B. Barron were working on little self-organizing, you might call them organisms, electronic organisms, and they recorded the output of that sound and then spliced that tape together and used it for the movie Forbidden Planet.
That's
and,
right. Yeah.
and so that was the first electronic soundtrack. The second electronic soundtrack was the stuff that was done by Yevgeny Morzhin in the Soviet Union with his ANS synthesizer. And that is now existing on the iPad as VNS. ANS, it says virtual ANS is the name of this software, and you can take pictures and you turn them into sound, and it's quite wonderful.
Excellent. Yeah, I thought a lot of it sounded familiar with some science fiction films that I've seen, and like Barbarella and all, and things like that.
Oh yeah. That's all.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, there's only so many sounds in the world, and so it's going to end up sounding like something or other to someone's ear somewhere at some time.
Thank you.
I can't see whether anyone's putting their hand up online, so just speak up if you have a question online.
I have a question. This is Jan. Can I talk?
Yes, Jan.
Okay. My question is about the setup that you have at Federation Square in Metz. And I'm wondering what kind of interest is happening there with younger people because of, I don't know, because of the electronics, because of the digitization. Could you address that, please?
Yeah, Metz is enormously popular. Gotcha is the pop star. Is one of the guys who's funding Metz. Metz is one of the largest collections of synthesizers in the world, and they constantly are doing workshops with all these devices, and so you can go there to learn to use electronic instruments like crazy. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff there. Things from like little handheld drum machines to big things like you saw the Surge synthesizer there. So you can connect things together and set up wonderful collections of gear. It's very popular with young people.
Yes.
You said you made tuning forks, a whole collection of tuning forks. How did you do that?
How did I do what?
There was an installation with a whole lot of different metal bars.
Oh, right. So you've got all these advertising signs, and you've got these things called transducers. And you simply take the transducer, which has a little loudspeaker driver, and you screw it onto the metal plate, and then you play the sound through the transducer. It makes the metal plate vibrate at its particular resonant frequencies. The reason we have paper loudspeakers is that paper is a pretty neutral device which will reproduce all sorts of sound frequencies with great accuracy and fidelity. You might want to get away from that, however, and so one of the things you can do with these transducers is put them on metal plates, and they will make all sorts of wonderful sounds. Also, you can take a transducer and put it into the wall of a swimming pool, and you will hear the sound underwater rather than out in the air. So they still exist, although they're very, very hard to find. But they still do exist, and you can still use them in, various sorts of installations.
Warren, I'd like to say thank you very much.
Okay.
For coming. It up to a point, it's like audible modern art, but then some of it has a very good use, as you mentioned in some of the films and stuff. Mm-hmm. You've obviously found it to be a very fascinating hobby.
Well, it's more than a hobby. It's been my
Yes.
life.
At life, yes, yes.
Yes.
But if you weren't doing it for your living, you'd be doing it for a hobby.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, what's a living? Tell me what a living is.
Yes, that's right. Look, it's a great delight if you can earn your living doing something that you really love rather than something you have to.
I have at times been earning my living with it. There was a good period in the late '90s. Now it's very, very difficult. Fortunately, I'm old enough that I can live on the pension.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for going to the trouble and presenting all that to us.
Thank you.
It was certainly fascinating. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, the really good news is Marlin is back from her trip to Sweden. So office hours are now back to normal, which is really good. Now, a very important one. We have some work we've got to do on the premises here to install a huge sliding door in a wall between the two rooms. They're going to be one maker room with a sliding door. Anyone who's got the sort of building, carpentry, what have you, handyman skills, we really, really, really need some help. Or we're going to have some contractors to do it. It's going to cost lots and lots of money. So please, if you've got the skills and the time, contact, I think, Rob Brown. Yep, contact Rob Brown, and we'll provide pies and Fanta if you come along and help out. I'll authorize that. But it's really important. Personally, I've been spending a bit of time exploring, and I'm sure others have, I know that others have, AI. For me, some of the stuff I've been doing is sort of club-oriented. So the last couple of What's On bulletins have been produced with a fair bit of help from AI. Marlin came back and told me I got one of the things wrong, so I'll fix that up next time round. And hopefully we'll be able to largely automate the production work on the PC Update newsletter as well. Because that will take, Marlin is doing that work at the moment, and it would be good to free her up for other things as well. So we are a computer club after all. So AI seems to me to need to fit into what we're doing. We could maybe even use it to generate music. The committee is start a process to get some help with our marketing and general image, shall we say, brand building. About a week ago, roughly, we had a meeting with a young lady who's fairly local, who's a graphic designer / marketing, / social media guru. And that went very well. So we've sort of got a potential there of getting some assistance on a contract basis. And just this afternoon, we had a meeting with another couple of people coming from a very different direction with what would you call it? Community groups. And there was a young lady there who obviously knows a whole heap about marketing as well. And she's threatening to join the club and help us out with that stuff. So we're trying to get an act together to market the club and the makerspace thing in particular, because we do believe that's where the future lies. Having said that about the future and makerspace, there's also an opportunity now that's kind of only arisen in the last couple of years, which is AI. So we're mulling over various possibilities for using AI under the more under the computer heading than the maker heading to attract young people. So with a bit of luck, those things will start to converge in the next 2 or 3, 4 months, and we might start to see the place livening up a bit more next year. So if anyone's got sort of interest in AI and wants to hang out around that, cool. I know Wadham House, I think on Friday, are talking about AI. at the Waltham House meeting. So yes, if it wasn't so blessed early, I might go there myself.
I think George is.
Yeah, that's George Scarvick. Yeah. Finally, the room that we in the room are in at the moment was rented out most of last week, or all of last week, to our next door neighbour in the other building, Echelon Productions, running a theatre training workshop of some sort. We're not directly involved. It was just nice that the room was being used by a local group for something useful. And we got a little bit of rental out of it too. A couple of $100 a day or something. Oh, yeah. So with my money and kitty. And that's it for me. Thank you.
I've brought a couple of things up with me, my laptop for notes, and a little sign that our CNC group have made for the sewing group to hang on the divider in the corridor there. So that's one of the things that's been happening down here lately. The CNC machine's working. I don't know if you can see this very well, but you can have a look at it on Facebook on the Makerspace, Moorabbin Makerspace Facebook page. There's a little clip on there of it and its construction. And then, of course, 3D printing a bracket to hang it on. So there's just some of the couple of things you can do around here during the week or on the weekends. But that's gone up on social media. It's had a lot of clicks. I'd like to thank Chris Hayes again, as well as Karen Addis and Steve Stubberfield. They've invited me to a regular Zoom meeting all about video editing and turning stills into reels and things like that. So we've got a regular crew now collating documents and photos and things and turning them into social media content. So we do need more still photographs of people's projects, whether they're a project you're doing on your own at home or one you've been doing in the club. I'd love to have your photos, and you can send them to me at MelbPC if you want, or in the office for other ideas on where to send that. But it's great that we're actually getting a group working hard to promote the club and bring our numbers up. And our numbers are starting to head in the right direction. We had 2 first-timers come in on Saturday, one for the sewing group and one for the microcontroller group. And I'm sure they'll both sign up. And we've got another very new member, Ian, that's with us in the room tonight. Glad to see more people coming into Moorabbin. So yeah, don't forget, if you're free during the days on a Monday from 11 o'clock, a couple of times a month it's on the calendar for Maker Mondays, where we're making camera sliders at the moment for club purposes and a spare one for members to borrow. Same with 3D printing Wednesdays. Come in, do some 3D printing, learn some 3D printing design. Anything you want to know about that, we can help you with on a Wednesday, any Wednesday really. But there are a couple of dates specifically in the calendar for more structured learnings. Our CNC group is on a Sunday regularly from 12 o'clock down in the workshop at Moorabbin. And our sewing group meets every 4 weeks. Come along and join the fun. What have I got here? Oh yes, our newcomer on Saturday for the microcontroller group has made himself useful right off the very bat. The first hour he was here, I reckon, and I was having some trouble with some code that wasn't quite working, and he came and had a look at it and found ChatGPT's mistake, where it had sent a pin high instead of low, and it did work after that. So the members helping members thing is happening straight off the bat, which is really good to see. So more of it. And last but not least, the daytime monthly meetings. We get a few more in the room for those meetings than we have here tonight. Wouldn't be hard, but I think it's a different dynamic. We don't have a regimented guest speaker. We may or may not have a guest speaker, depending on the day. But we certainly do have a fun and interesting quiz with a small prize, and a $15 lunch. We had a 3-course meal last month, and it was divine. Some tomato soup, homemade tomato soup with a cheese toastie and a beautiful cheesecake. It was the best cheesecake I've ever had. So I do urge you, if you've got nothing better to do on the third Tuesday of each month, rock on down, come and socialise, have a decent feed for a good price, and just get in amongst it. Use the space that we pay for here. May as well use it. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, so I'm going to zero in on what I think will be some of our members' main concern, but look outside it first in the wide world. So the big picture, the big build of AI data centers has driven up the price of, among other things, RAM used in the build of Windows PCs. Reflected in the price of pre-built PCs, also impacted the market for components for build-it-yourself PCs, as indeed we have heard in post-meeting discussions here in the last few months. The change to date has not been, well, almost up to date, anything to do with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the constraint on petrochemical products. But if we look at tomorrow, one effect of the closure of the strait has been a shutdown in the supply of helium gas, which is produced from natural gas. I believe the largest single source is the Qatar gas field. Helium is important for the story because it's used in the manufacture of microprocessors. The effect of this on the physical production of items like large hard drives, memory chips, and downstream electronics has been predicted to arrive in late 2026. And I think there are some effects creeping through already. Unless helium supplies are restored, we can expect further rises in the price of PCs and components during the rest of 2026. Okay, so that's the big picture. How does it affect me or you? Well, it does rather depend, doesn't it? Do I need to purchase a new PC anytime soon? First question. If I do need to, what is the minimum specification for a PC that I can live with, given that costs are rising? Finally, how do I get a PC with my desired specification at the lowest cost? So first question, do I need to purchase one anyway? Well, if your current PC is given up and you're sure you need a new PC, then of course you need to purchase something. Or get someone to give it to you free of charge, but I'm not regarding that as a realistic opportunity for most people here. Special case, of course, is Windows 10. If your current Windows PC is using Windows 10 and cannot be upgraded, you should consider purchasing for Windows 11. There is a point here, though. I have recently spoken to a member perfectly aware of the Windows 10 problem, but quite unaware about the ESU. So that security update is still on offer from Microsoft. And that means your Windows 10 computer, although the features of Windows won't change, can be made more secure against malware attacks. On the other hand, if your needs are basic, or satisfied by what you're already using, this is not a good time to try for an upgrade. Say that with some caution we can discuss. So now on to what you'd be looking for if you were buying a new Windows PC, particularly what the minimum specification is. It does depend what you use your Windows computer for. Here are some basic uses which most users, including everyone in this room who isn't in Moorabbin, who's using Zoom. So email, other communications, messaging apps such as WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, etc. any video conferencing, doesn't have to be limited to Zoom, of course, and web browsing, which is just about anything you can do using a browser like Chrome or Edge. Now, in that case, you can settle for a PC, Windows PC, with 8 GB of RAM, and no more than 512 GB of storage. And I think when you're purchasing, you'll know what storage you've been using, assuming you've got sight of a computer you've been using. And that's, of course, a very good guide. One point about the RAM. Mentioning web browsing, one of the main consumers of working memory are, in fact, browsers. The more tabs you open, the more memory gets used. And I upgraded from 8 to 16 GB on my previous computer precisely to cope with that problem. Something else that I like to mention, because it doesn't often come up in reviews and so on, which are all written by people under 40 with 20/20 vision, namely the screen and what that means for the convenience and indeed comfort for you. You need a display large enough to hold type you can easily read while showing full lines of text. Now, we can go deeply into this particular branch of the rabbit warren later on, but the point here is the bigger the screen, the larger the typeface you can make show, the shorter the effective line of text for a given length. And that particular change won't always be reflected in the word wrap. I'll leave that at that because we can discuss, right? I'm just trying to give the headlines at the moment. And the other key feature of the display, again, which is quite difficult to track, is the brightness. I'm now using a slightly newer Lenovo laptop, which has, I think, about 400 nits, as they call it, which is candela per, the nits is actually a funny name for candela per square meter, apparently. So you do need a display that's bright enough to be easy for you to see in your usual viewing conditions, including any away from home conditions for a laptop. And that isn't to be taken for granted. And also, viewing computers in stores is not often a very good test because they use low lighting quite often. Okay, assuming you've settled your specification, where do you look for getting it at the least cost to yourself? Well, the most obvious thing to do for lowest cost is to buy a used refurbished PC. And they do exist, and mostly in iHelp, we recommend members to go to Reboot IT or Reboot It, which is Melbourne-based and claims to be the largest supplier of refurbished PCs in the country. A couple of notes about buying refurbished. Your warranty will be shorter, and you need to be a little bit careful about battery life, because I don't think you can take it for granted that the computer you buy would have been given a brand new battery. Now, I did take the trouble to message Reboot It about this, and their chatbot came straight back to tell me they will tell you the key statistics about the battery of any computer they're selling, namely the number of charge cycles it's had and what percentage of its design charge it's at. A lot depends how you use the laptop. Again, we can leave that for discussion. Another question, of course, independent of that, is whether it is easy to get a good battery to replace one that you want to replace. With phones, as most of us know, probably the weakest link, short of dropping it on the ground several times, is the battery. And once that goes, you want a new one, and it very much depends on the maker and the design whether you can get a new battery, or if you're in the Apple system, whether you can get a replacement machine under warranty and so on if the battery's gone. The other thing you can do And I put this at the end because I'm tending to focus this on the assumption that we're in the Windows market. But there are alternatives. If you're currently using a Windows computer, and there's someone in the room, I think, who will remind us of this, if I hadn't said it already, particularly if your hardware is, from your point of view, working fine, except for example, being locked into Windows 10, then you can install Linux, and it can probably be very happy on your computer. Whether you can be very happy with Linux is a quite separate question. Another alternative now, there are two new kids, relatively, well, there's one, this is a relatively new kid on the block, and the next one is even newer, is a Chromebook. So they are subject to footnotes, computers designed around the Chrome browser, but they do have local storage, and they will come with other applications, including Zoom. So there's so much you can do with a browser now that you can do most of the things I mentioned, of course, in addition to the dedicated browser things you already know about, by using a browser. Chromebooks start at prices very like the prices of refurbished PCs. So I was looking at Officeworks a couple of hours ago, and there's actually a Lenovo Chromebook on sale for $1,000, which is a lot more than most of them are costing. I'm not quite sure what it's got for the 1,000. Finally, this is a really interesting new kid on the block. Many of you might well have read about this because it made quite a lot of headlines in the last couple of months. Apple has launched, by their standards, a really cheap MacBook called the Neo. I think the starting price is just over $1,000, which is very low for any piece of Apple computer hardware. And again, we can discuss at length, but Apple have played a trick in terms of their own internal costs by taking a chip that's in the leading edge iPhones and repurposing it into this Apple MacBook. And I did read that the chips they're taking are ones that have been rejected in the iPhone stream for what is a fault that doesn't affect the way they've set up the Neo. So there's a sense in which they're getting their CPUs free of charge in the context of their business. And the Apple MacBook has got some quite good reviews, particularly for its price point. But we can go back to that in discussion later, okay? So that's the end of my main presentation, and I now welcome questions. So I've got a lot of beautiful faces here. Most of them with better illumination than I'm offering of mine. I rather like the ghostly effect, so I don't want to change it at the moment.
Yes, you look like your ghost.
Well, of course I am my ghost, aren't I? Because I'm on the Moorabbin Zoom at the moment for some reason, with a slightly better illumination than I am on my own screen. So goodness knows what's going on there. I'll enjoy the illusion of having a twin while it lasts.
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks very much for that, Harry. That was what I thought to be a good overview. We live in very interesting times. So I've seen a lot of YouTubers, like Linus Tech Tips and Gamers Nexus and a few others that have pretty much gone, well, our hobby's gone, we can't build new computers. So, yeah, I'm not sure what people do. I think you have to sort of make up your own decisions. I was just going to comment, while the emphasis on if you want to run Windows, yeah, sure, I get that. But I have converted about 3-4 people who are very tech non-savvy, that were stuck on Windows 10 to Linux. And because pretty much all they ever did was browse stuff,
yeah,
they really just haven't even noticed.
Good.
So depending on the use case,
yes,
I think it's very viable. And the Linux distros run so much better on the old Windows 10 type hardware than Windows 10 does. And they're almost saying, well, it's almost like getting a new computer. So depending on use case, because I mean, there are going to be people who it's just not going to work for them. I get that, but depending on use case, it's a very viable option. And I've had a lot of experience getting PCs from Reboot IT, and I think there's another one, Untech or something, that they're both Melbourne, that do secondhand computers. And yeah, I totally recommend them. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, fair play. Good.
You've got to do your homework, because obviously they're quite happy to sell you a very, very obsolete computer at a very low price.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure that what you're getting is going to meet your needs. But yeah, I've had a lot of experience with them and never had a problem. It's very recommended.
Many thanks, Paul, because first of all, you reinforced the realization I had about this, which is that I think of the point of view from where we are in iHelp. We have a self-elected group of about a third of the members rolling, right? Not many of whom will be in this room, probably, because being in this room probably means you're going beyond the very basic functions. But that's why I put that in, because if you stop there, of course, in a way you can say, look, if your PC is really dead, think of a Chromebook. But if it's not, you can create a Chromebook almost by using Linux, because a little bit of tweeting, we do talk to members who refuse to move to the browser interface, even to Google Gmail, right, which is designed for, bless it, for all that the interface is fairly challenging, says he. But you can do so much through a browser anyway. And I mean, do you have a favorite distro for Windows refugees, by the way, as a matter of interest?
I've been using Linux for a very long time. I think I
Right.
installed Slackware back in the 2000s or something.
Yeah.
I pretty much standardized on Ubuntu.
Right.
But that's just because I prefer to run one distro rather than have lots of different distros everywhere. So I do get that other people would prefer other preferences and they've had good experiences with it. That's fine. I've just chosen to stick with one.
Well, fair play, Paul. It wasn't actually meant to be a personal question. What I'm thinking is, if you've got somebody who's a wavering migrant from Windows to Linux, maybe this is a silly question. Are there some distros that are much easier for the migrant than others?
Well, like I said, I've only gone with Ubuntu, because I know how it works. When people ring me, I know what it is. And so
I can see two other refugees on my screen. So I don't know if anybody else wants to come in on that one.
Other people have other opinions, and I don't. I'm happy to defer to them because I just have not used those distros, so I can't comment.
Yeah.
Zorin or Mint are often recommended for new users, unless you have specific requirements for one of the other more specialised distros.
Yeah. Sorry, Sean, what was the first one before Mint?
Zorin.
Oh, Zorin. Okay, right.
It has a very Windows-like feel that's easy for transition.
Good. Thank you very much. No, I mean, that's specific.
And Linux Mints is the other one that's often recommended for first timers.
No, I mean, we don't often, I think, find ourselves in that position. But as this game goes on, I think we're going to be squeezing anyone still with Windows 10. Nobody knows, I think, how long Microsoft will continue the ESU. Of course, they're in a bit any other kinds of trouble that are far more existential than the Windows 10 problem. I mean, thinking about their engagement with the AI business, which we can discuss after 9 o'clock if we want to, because it's such an amazing topic in its own right. But it figures only here because it's a pressure on the market for chips, really. That's its role affecting our little backwater. Okay.
Yeah, Harry, I've just started using Linux Mint as well.
Thanks. And you're happy?
Yeah, well, I had to get a new PC because my old PC was 14 years old, still running Windows 7.
All right. Oh, bless it.
So I finally upgraded to a new PC a couple of months ago.
Right.
And I've got 2 drives in it, one with Linux Mint installed and one with Windows 10 installed.
Oh, okay.
So I can just switch between the 2 of them easily.
Right. Right.
Harry, before we move on with questions, would you
Yes.
remind us who are the people on the iHelp team, please?
Who are present? Well, I can only see Stuart Granickley at the moment.
No, just who are on the iHelp?
Who's on it? Who's on it? Oh my goodness! Well, Monday's guys Cedric Wyndham. Tuesday, I think getting confused about Tuesdays. Is it Johan on Tuesdays now, Stuart? We've got 2 wonderful. Oh, no, it's Peter Selig on Tuesday, isn't it now? Peter's a really old hand. I don't think he's in the room at the moment. In fact, the room seems to have shrunk to a single screen now, so it makes it easier. I'm on Wednesday. Stuart, when he's here, is on the Thursday, but every now and then he flies to more interesting places or drives to more interesting places. Then Johan Ashton, who's our other new recruit, who is by far the youngest member of the team, I think he's 25 by now, is also on a part of Friday. Burt has been on sick leave for quite some time, but he's still with us. And of course, Dave Simpson is still coming on board. And Chris McKeon, who is our new convener, who has just recently succeeded Dave, is at the moment a sweeper because he gave up Tuesday to fit in with other people's requirements. But we see that both Dave and Chris are very active, but they're not rostered. Okay. At the moment, I think that's right. So I think I've got everybody, haven't I, Stuart?
I think it's worth adding that there are some other people who are not actually rostered on during the week, but they are active watchers and they're available for either home visits or just to give us general advice.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear, because it's not always easy to. Historically, the home visit assist service was quite independent of iHelp. Those with the memories of the days when you got all the services on 2 sides of A4 over across 2 months. And among other things, by the way, you had a lot of specialists there. Peter Selig was in that list. But home visit has somewhat shrunk. Cedric Wyndham, who is a fully fledged member of iHelp and now the longest serving by quite a way actually of us, is also the manager at home visits. He's down to a handful of visitors, and there's quite a strain on that. I don't think we do it on that front that we're doing all that badly, but it is partly a difficulty with members who are very distant, because mostly if you're going to do a home visit, you've got to travel to them, of course. But yes, so home visit assist still exists as well.
That's a strong team, and I'm sorry to hear that Burt's not well.
No, he's had quite a heroic period of years, actually.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's come 9 o'clock, Harry, so we're going to stop the recording and formally close the meeting.
Okay.
And the Q&A can continue until you need to go to bed.
Oh, thank you so much.